Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on member type configuration. The more eagle-eyed among you may have noticed this is just an update webinar. So we're here to shed some light on the way member types have changed and also go over the basics for anyone looking to get started with ClubExpress. Before we get started, I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping. So all of your microphones are currently muted. If you have any questions, please put those in the Zoom chat window. We have Samantha, our director of training, in the chat, and she can help answer questions throughout. And then any kind of like really relevant questions we'll go over again at the end of the webinar during a bit of a Q&A. If you want to see what webinars are upcoming, you can go to clubexpress.com and click on the calendar option. Once there, you can look at the schedule of upcoming webinars. You can also register ahead of time from there. If you register ahead of time, it'll do a few things. It'll obviously give you a confirmation email with a link to the webinar as well, but you can also go there and put in questions. So if there's something related to the topic that we're going over that you really want to see in that particular webinar, you can go ahead and say, hey, our organization needs to know information about this specific scenario, and we can make sure to add that to that webinar to make sure that your questions get answered. While you're kind of searching around, also head over to our YouTube channel. You can find that on youtube.com by searching clubexpress.com. That is with the dot spelled out. So that's ClubExpress, DOTCOM. And while you're on our YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe. If you do that, you'll get updates whenever we post new tutorials, version announcements, or webinars. We put a lot of content on our YouTube channel. So if you're curious about a certain part of ClubExpress, odds are there's a video that is associated with it. And the last thing before we get started with our webinar is our reviews. So if you go to clubexpress.com/reviews, we love to hear from people about how we can improve, what we can change to make it work better for you. And also, if you're just really enjoying ClubExpress, it really helps other people decide if it is the correct tool for them to use. So again, we just love to hear from you. So head over to clubexpress.com/reviews and let us know how we're doing. So let's go ahead and talk about membership type configuration. We're going to be going over both the basics and then some of the more advanced options that have been added in the last few months and few years. So we're going to be talking about the different things like member type availability. That means like who can sign up for the member type. We'll be talking about the different types of renewals. So you can do things like automatic renewals. So when it comes time for your members to renew, the system can actually manage that for them. We'll also talk about the manual options as well. So that means that members would be forced to log into your website to make sure they renew. Both are really useful, one for automating it, making it a lot easier for your users. And the manual option obviously drives users back to your website. So if you have content you want people to see, that makes sure that people are actually visiting your website at least once a year or once a quarter or however often you renew. We'll also talk about the way to charge for late fees. So if you are an organization where you strongly encourage people to keep their membership active, you can do things like charging late fees. And so you can say, if you expire, then there's an added $5 cost, to cover the lapse in time or something like that. We'll also go over a little bit of custom menuing. So you can actually set up customized menus for each member type. So if you have something in your organization like gold level or, sponsor level or something like that, you can create unique navigations for each membership type. That's not something that gets used a lot, but it is a powerful tool if you want to encourage navigation to different locations for different members. We'll also talk about approval settings. So this is whether or not a member is required to get approval from, say, the board or an administrator before becoming a member. And we'll also talk about the options if you turn that off, what that means for the public who visit your website. One big change to the way the membership, this is one of our newer features relatively for ClubExpress, is the business membership options. So you can do things like setting up business memberships where it prioritizes business information over personal information. And we also have a new option where you can actually create a code so that if a business joins and they have other people who are also a part of their business that need to be members, you can give them a special code. And when that member joins, they just plug that code in and the system will automatically tie them together. It used to be that if a business member needed to add an extra employee or something like that, they either had to be added by an administrator and connected, or that business member would need to do, the primary person for that business would need to do it manually themselves. We have updated it so that all they need to do is just give that person joining a code and they can handle the rest from there. Speaking of business memberships with sub members and employees, we'll also talk about the sub member options. So that is something a few of our organizations use where you have one primary member, and then there are other members as a part of that organization or a part of that membership where they are members at a lower level to their primary. And there's a few things that the primary can control for that sub member. As with late fees, we'll also talk about the pricing options. When it comes to pricing, for the most part, it's just a set fee for certain memberships. There might be a late fee, but also with pricing, there also are subgroup fees. So there are fees you can set for different subgroups so that when a member joins, if they join subgroups, we will set prices for each subgroup level. That doesn't mean you have to charge if a member joins a subgroup. It just means you have that choice. And also, whenever I say subgroup, that also means chapters. So a lot of our organizations are chaptered organizations. And if you're one of those groups, if you have chapters or regions or areas, that is what I mean by subgroup. So that's just our catch-all term for chapters and things like that. So now that we have an idea of what we're going to be going over today, let's actually kind of skip over to our demonstration. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is our availability and renewal types, and we'll go into detail on what each of those mean. So when we're looking at availability, this is going to be who is able to access that membership type. So there's a lot of different controls for availability. There's things like new users, so you can have like a discount for someone signing up, or maybe it's a little bit more expensive the first time someone signs up to cover administrative onboarding. We'll also take a look really quickly in just a second over our renewal types. So similar to availability, this is what it takes for a member of that type to renew, whether that's a manual process or automatic. And when we're talking about renewal types, we're going to talk about our other big change to the way membership types work. We're going to talk about automatic renewals with payments. This is something we've had for many, many years, is the ability for memberships to be renewed automatically and for a payment to be charged automatically as well. But we've actually changed the way it works fairly recently. It used to be if you were going to do automatic renewals with payment, that you were required to add a credit card. And if you were going to be in that membership type, the only way to renew in that membership type was to have it do automatic payment. This was complicated for a few reasons. That meant that you had to have multiple membership types. It effectively doubled the number of membership types you needed to create, because you would have to create one membership type that was not automatic and one membership type that was for each membership type you had. With our new options, we are actually able to combine those into one membership type. So we have two different options when you are setting up automatic renewals with payments. You have a required option, and now we've added an optional tool. What that means is that when someone chooses a membership type with automatic renewals, they have the choice of whether or not they want to include payment as a part of that. If they don't include payment, then the system will still automatically renew them, but it won't require them to charge their card. It will just give them an email saying, hey, your membership has been renewed, but you still need to log into the website to submit payment if there is a fee associated with it. So let's go take a look at these two settings real quick. I'm going to hop over to my demo website real quick. So let me change my screen. So now you should see our demo website of our Northwest Balloon Club. This is a site we use fairly often. I'm logged in as an administrator right now as Martin Smith. I'm going to head over to my control panel. So I'm going to click on control panel. And I'm going to stay in the people tab of the control panel. This is where we'll focus pretty much all of our attention today. And the member type configuration page is going to be down here under setup below member types. Now, keep in mind, this is a demo website, so we do a lot of testing on it, which means when I click on member types, we're going to get a whole bunch. We have a lot of messy data on this website. But what it's important to keep in mind is that you actually have the ability to create tons and tons of membership types. The alternative is also true. If you're a very simple organization, you can create just one or two if you would prefer. But with the way ClubExpress works, you can actually create as many membership types. So if you have everything from free membership types all the way up to sponsored membership types that cost, $1,000 or $2,000, you can have all sorts of different configurations and settings in between those options. So I'm going to play around with this bar association member type. This is the one I'm going to be looking at today for a lot of our settings. We'll kind of look around at some others, but this is the one I'm going to be kind of stepping through today. So in order to take a look at the configuration for it, we're just on the membership type administration screen. But to go into the settings, I'm going to click on the pencil out on the right-hand side. Those of you who've been with ClubExpress for a while know that the pencil always means edit. That means make some sort of change. So when I click on this pencil, it's going to take me into the configuration screen for this particular member type. So this is the screen. This is the add edit member type screen. This is the screen we'll see whenever we are either adding a new membership type. This is also the screen we'll get when we want to edit an existing membership type. So you can always go back and make changes. Just because you've added a member type doesn't mean that it's stuck that way forever. You can always come back and make changes if you need to adjust your pricing or adjust the availability. You can always go back and make those changes later. So the first thing we'll see is just a name, and this is where we name our membership type. So we have it just named as Bar Association 1, but we could change this to be whatever membership type we want to call it. So a lot of our organizations have, individual memberships or family memberships or, bronze, silver, and gold level memberships. This is just the terminology for what you call people that fit into this categorization. ClubExpress loves to categorize people, and membership types is just the primary categorization for your members. So this is one that is actually required. Setting up membership types is required to use ClubExpress. This is just how we initially start calling our organizations. If you're an organization with only one membership type and you don't need to break that out, most people would just put member here, and that would just be the one membership type that they use. Below name, you get the option for a description. This is an optional field. You don't have to fill this in. You'll notice on ClubExpress, we use these little red dots to note that something is either required or optional. So you'll notice there's no red dot out to the side of the description. The primary use of description is to give extra info. So if you do have multiple membership types and you want to give information about what it means to be in that membership type, if it comes with a free parking spot at your clubhouse or something like that, you can put that information here. And when a member is signing up and selecting their membership type, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit, when they are selecting their membership types, whenever they click on that particular membership type, it'll give them that description. So it'll show them what it means to be a member of that type. The next thing we need to configure, and this is another one with that red dot, meaning it's a required field, is the duration. How long does it last to be a member? Every single membership type does require a duration. So they all have to expire at some point. That's just a part of the way ClubExpress works. The default for a lot of our organizations is 12 months, meaning that when you join, your membership will expire a year later. So if it's a yearly membership, you would just put in 12 months here. Some people have quarterly memberships. You can do things like a 3-month membership. And some organizations have lifetime memberships that theoretically never expire. And there's a few ways to manage that. Some organizations will just put 500, and that is actually the maximum amount of months that you can put in this field. But 500 months, if you do that quick math, that's about 40 years. And so a lot of our organizations, if you're a member of that club, 500 months will add up to pretty much a lifetime membership. When it comes to that, especially if it's a free membership that you're giving someone 500 months for, when we talk about the renewal settings automatic, you could, instead of doing a 500-month membership, if it's a lifetime membership, you could just say, maybe it's a 12-month membership, but it renews automatically and is free. And that way members would never have to worry about renewing. The system would renew them for them. But we'll get more into, that kind of a configuration just a little bit. For now, for our kind of business membership we're setting up today, I'm going to leave that as 12 months. It's a yearly membership. So here's the big thing we were talking about just a minute ago is availability. We have several options when it comes to availability. The default option is new members and renewals. This means when a member is signing up, new members, that means this is one of the options available to them to choose. And because it says and renewals, that means when they expire. So after that first 12-month period, once they've joined, if renewals is selected here as well, that means that they can still use this membership type as their renewal type. So that means they can stay in that membership type forever. Alternatively, our next option down is new members only. So if you have, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, if you have a membership type where once someone joins, there's an administrative fee for their first onboarding, or maybe you want to encourage members to join and it's a little bit cheaper for your first year as kind of like a new member discount, you can choose this new members only option, and you could name it something like, new members. And if you were to name it new members, you could assign a price. We'll get to pricing a little bit later. And this would be available to new members only, meaning once their first 12 months expires, because this is available to new members only, they won't be able to choose this again. I'll leave that as bar association. The next option is renewals only. So similarly, if we wanted to have a membership type that was only available to members who have already been a part of our organization. So we're keeping with that more expensive administrative fee up top, as we were talking about before, we would make a second membership type for renewals only. And this would be either a more expensive or a cheaper option if we were going to give a discount for members renewing. And that would, encourage people to continue to be members. Or maybe if it's a discount for that first year, then it becomes more expensive for your second year and so on. This would only be available to members who have already joined the organization, and they would choose this when they renew. So new members who are signing up for the first time are not going to have this membership type with this availability set up. Then there's a few more kind of niche options. So we have this one here, trial new members only. So if you offer a free trial of your membership, you can choose this option, trial new members only. This will give them access to the website as though they were a full member with a few limitations. Most often with trial membership types, you'll choose a very specific website menu, and we'll get to that in a second. With trial members, you have a few ways of limiting their access. So whenever you're using other modules and you're selecting, active members only or something like that, anything that requires a member to be quote unquote active won't apply to trial. Trial is going to be its own membership status. So members will get to kind of feel out whether or not they want to be a member of this organization, but they will have limited access to a few features such as events or different parts of the website that require what we would call an active membership. Most often for our organizations that do use a trial membership, they'll set the duration as 1, 2, or 3 months. That way it's kind of like a tryout, but not a full year. The next option, renewal same type only. This is another one that's really, really useful for lifetime memberships. So as I discussed before, we could have a duration of 12 months and let people renew into a lifetime membership, but renewal same types only. What that means is you can only choose this membership type if you are already in this membership type. So if you have some sort of grandfathered in lifetime membership or something that is only available to people of a certain tier, this will let members renew themselves, but they'll only be able to use that membership type for as long as they maintain it. So if they are choosing a lifetime membership, they would have to already be a lifetime member in order to renew into this type. So someone who's a trial member would not be able to then move over to the renewal same type only. The exception to that is if an administrator steps in. So obviously we want people to be able to get into this membership type for the first time. So you could either manually set someone up as a member of that type, or if they're already that type and you change that type to be same type only, then it would, slowly decrease in membership as people are, changing to different membership types. And then the final option here is admin only. So if you have some sort of, staff membership type that you want only your administrators to have access to, this will be that option. Now, just because it says admin only, that doesn't mean that only admins can be this membership type. This just means when it comes to creating a membership type or editing a member, only admins have access to it. So you can assign a member to a membership type that is admin only. The member just can't do it themselves. You have to already be an administrator in order to have access to that. So those are our different availability options. You'll notice we've ordered them not necessarily alphabetically, but by their most common usage. So new member and renewals, this is at the very top, just because that is the most commonly used. And this will be the default whenever you create new membership types. So that is the most commonly used availability, and that is what most people stick to. Then we come to renewals, and this is where we get kind of interesting. I'll have to go back to my slideshow in just a second because there are options that aren't available on our demo website. And the reason for that is there are 2 different types of renewals. There are use default settings, and what that means is it's going to have the members renew themselves. So that means whenever a member expires, whenever they come to the end of their membership duration, they need to come to the website and log in and renew themselves. They have to actually take action in order to be renewed. The other option is our automatic renewals. So this is a secondary option. This does not include payments. You'll notice it doesn't say automatic renewals with payment. It just says automatic renewals. What this means is that when it comes time for a member to expire, the system will go ahead and process that renewal. But if there is a fee associated with that, it will assign that fee to the member, but it won't process payment. So the member will get an email saying, hey, you've been renewed. And if there is a charge for it, then they will also get an email letting them know what the charge amount is. They will still have to log into the website to submit that payment. And I know that seems a little bit less useful, but what this is really useful for is organizations that require constant membership. So if you require that if you're a member from year to year, that you have to, fill in that entire year as an active member, it'll process their renewal. They'll just have to go in and pay for it. That way, there's never a lapse in their membership. There is never a time where they were actually expired. Now, we'll talk about a setting later. There is a choice where you can say if they don't pay within a certain time period, they will then become expired. And then they would have to talk to an administrator to then be renewed. There is a setting here that says renew members, and then there's a little blank days before expiration. And we can go ahead and say, I want to process that renewal a number of days before expiration. And a lot of people are tempted to put 0 here. I would personally advise against that. I usually say do it 2 or 3 days before expiration. The reason for that is if that falls on a weekend, this process runs on weekdays. It is something that ClubExpress does semi-manually. It helps us keep things a little bit tighter and cleaner. And the reason for that is kind of a database reason. I don't know the full details of it, but what it ultimately means is if you choose 2 or 3 days before expiration, that means the actual time of their processing renewal won't fall on a weekend and it won't get missed, and they won't get any emails that say like, hey, you've expired, or hey, you've reached your expiration date. Setting it as 3 days will mean there's never a day that's actually on a weekend for that. The other benefit of this is that they will have those 3 days to then go in and pay before they actually reach their expiration date. So if that's important for your members to pay before the actual date of their expiration, this gives them that time frame to do so. The last note about the kind of renewal process being automatic here is that when your members receive those emails, it'll also generate that payment on their account. It's not going to process that payment for them. So I have to switch back to my slideshow because on our demo websites, we can't process credit cards because they're, fake example websites. There will be 2 more options here for organizations that have credit card payments set up. So let me switch screens real quick. So this is what that's going to look like. This is the page we were looking at just a minute ago over here, this first picture on the upper left-hand side. When we click that drop down, so we'll see there's our use default settings, and then there's our automatic renewals. If you are an organization with us that has credit cards set up as a payment option, then you should see 2 more options for your renewal types. You'll see automatic renewal and payment is required, or automatic renewal and payment is optional. If you don't see these and you do have credit cards set up with us, give our support team a call if you want to use one of them, and we can just toggle that on to make sure that you're up to date. Because if you've been using the credit card payment with us for a number of years, then there's just a small switch we have to make on the back end. Not a big change, but then this should become available to you. As I mentioned before, what this will do is it will give your members an option to put a credit card on file with us. And that way, whenever their membership renews, it will go ahead and process that payment for them. So automatic renewal payment is required, means they have to put in a credit card when they choose this membership type. If they don't put in a credit card, then it actually won't process their membership and they'll get stuck in limbo until they do. So the only option they'll have is to put in a credit card information. If they don't do that, then it's not going to process their membership. The other option is payment is optional. If you do that, then it will let them continue on with their membership without putting in payment options, and then they'll just function like this automatic renewals option up here. So with the optional choice, if they do put in credit card information, and this is what that screen looks like. So in their profile, they'll see more member options, and there's a button that just says credit card, and then they'll see edit credit card information. This will show up in their profile. If they put their credit card information in here under the optional choice, then it will process whenever they renew. So it's just an option whether or not they want to put a credit card on file with us. So that's what that will look like. Let me go back to my screen share and we'll continue down the rest of our settings. So one last note before we move on to our late fee options. With this renewal date, A lot of people get confused and they say, oh, if it renews 3 days before their expiration, are they missing out on those 3 days if it gets renewed? No. So what it'll do is it'll base the renewal on their expiration date. This is just the day that it's processed. So it'll essentially comp them those 3 days for the next year. So just because you, even if you set this, as 2 weeks in advance, it'll renew them 14 days before their actual expiration, but it will tack on those extra 14 days to their membership so that it'll still equal that full 12-month duration. So you don't need to worry about it processing beforehand and them losing time. So the next thing after we decide on our availability and renewal is, are we charging for this membership type? And if we are, is there a change? Is there a late fee? So we have a few options when it comes to late fees. You have after expiration date and on actual expiration. So after expiration date, what that means is once they reach their expiration date, it's going to change the fee from one to another. If we choose after actual expiration, that means it'll only change the fee once their status is changed to expired. The reason there's a distinction between those two is in our renewal settings, there is an option to give people a grace period. So you can say that there's a 2-week or 1-month grace period. You can have a grace period up to 90 days, where if they reach their expiration date, it doesn't actually limit their access to the website until that grace period expires. So if you say after actual expiration, the late fee won't go into effect until their status actually changes. So that will calculate their grace period into when their late fee goes into effect. If you say after expiration date, even if there is a grace period of 30, 60, or 90 days or something like that, it will still charge them the late fee, even though they're still active because they are past their expiration date. So those are two different options. And all this allows you to do is just to set a different price. So once they reach a certain, time period, the price can go up for a late charge. The next option we have is our website menu. So this is what menu that member uses as a part of their membership. So we have the first option here, default member menu. So whenever you're configuring your menus, there's going to be a little checkbox. Let's go take a look at that real quick. I'm going to open an extra tab and go take a look at our menu screen. If we go to the website tab of our control panel, that's where we'll see menus down here under setup. When we're looking at our menus, we have two different menus set up right now. We have a member menu and we have a public menu. And this will let us control the navigation of our website. So we can say members will see this list of options when they're logged in. And if you're not logged in, or if you're not a member, this is what you'll see. So we also, whenever we're editing one of these menus, we get these two little check boxes up at the top, and it says defaults, public, default, member. And when we check those, it'll fill in. So we have our member menu here, and that is set up as our default member menu. We also have a public menu, and that is set as our default public menu. If we leave everything set up as default, then whenever a member is logged in, this is the menu that they'll see. And whenever they're logged out, this is the menu that they'll see. We can actually create a third and fourth menu. So if we wanted to make an additional menu and call it, our gold member menu, and give them access to a different part of the website and point their navigation somewhere else, we can create as many member menus as we want. And we don't have to check either of these boxes. We can just have it be a non-default menu. When we are looking at our membership types, so I'm going to go back to this other tab, we get this website menu dropdown. So we can say for our bar association members, they get access to specifically the member menu. More usefully, if we don't want our trial members to get access to some of the navigation that our menus have, what I've seen pretty often is whenever you set up a trial membership, instead of giving them the default member menu, you keep them on the public menu. So they have access to a profile, they have access to the calendar, they can still sign up for events that allow trial members to sign up, but they don't have access to the full member menu navigation. So this will let you set up, a limited access to the website if you wanted to have that. The other option is if you have things like gold members or sponsor members who have extra things, you can create a menu with an added menu items, say sponsor page, and it gives them information. If you want to put information on a specific page that is just for sponsors, you could have, something similar to the member menu, but with additional navigation items for that membership type. And then only members of that member type would see that menu. If you leave it as default in these little kind of caret brackets here, if you leave that as default, it'll use whatever is checked as default on the member menu. So leaving this as default member menu will use whatever menu has this checked right here. So then we also have financial account. You'll notice for a lot of our organizations, it's only going to say master membership dues. So there's going to be an account called master membership dues on every one of our organizations. For a lot of you, when you click this dropdown, that's the only option that's going to be available to you. And that might be because you may not have set up your financial accounts to have other, what we would call sub financial accounts below the master membership dues option. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to just have your, reports be very simple. If you're an organization that wants to break out your reporting to be a lot more specific and you want to track, how much this membership type brings in, how much, this subgroup brings in, then you can add additional financial accounts. And I believe we have training videos and I believe a webinar as well that go over financial account creation. But if you want to be specific and say, we have our bar association and members that join this way are going to go into the bar association financial account, you could create an additional financial account that feeds into the master membership dues. And you'll see we have a lot of additional financial accounts set up on our demo website, and all of these feed into the master membership dues account. Those of you who have chaptered organizations will also see your chapter financial accounts below here, and it will feed into the financial account for that chapter as a part of that organization. You'll see QuickBooks item name. Some of you may not see QuickBooks item name. This may be an invisible field for you. If you're an organization that has the QuickBooks add-on chosen, that just means that there's an option to export all of your financial data to QuickBooks. And this is where you can assign a name. So you could say this is, most times you would just use the same name. So you could say this item name is Bar Association. So anytime someone joins the organization as a Bar Association member, then in QuickBooks, it would show up as being called Bar Association. And then we get a really useful toggle on and off. And this is a very simple toggle, but it actually has a rather large effect. So it says requires approval, yes or no. If we say no, then whenever a member joins, all they have to do is pay whatever associated fees are available, and then they become active members with access to the website. There is no limitation between the public and access to the website, meaning that I can join without administrators saying, yes, this person is okay to be a member of our website and getting access to things. If you would prefer to lock down your website a little bit more and say people can only get access to the member functions if an administrator gives them the go-ahead, then you can say requires approval, yes. And whenever a member submits an application to be submits a form to join the organization, it will give an email to your membership director. And an administrator will have to go to the people manager and look for prospective members. So instead of becoming active members, they will get put into the prospective status, and an administrator will have to go to the people manager and check off and say, I approve this member's application. So to show you what that looks like, if we go over to our control panel, what you would have to do is go over to your people tab of your control panel, go over to your people manager. If we just reset this, and instead of looking for member status, again, the default search is active and expired. If we uncheck these and just look for prospective members, these are going to be all of the people that are pending approval. And we can see we've got a handful here. And in order to approve someone, we would just come over to their membership and say, this person is prospective. I will approve them. If they are not approved, so if I come in here and say, Charlie Anderson is not approved for membership, I can choose to decline that, and they would get an email saying that their membership has been declined. If you don't want to send an email to someone letting them know they've been declined, maybe you'll tell them in person, or maybe they're not going to be admitted for one reason or another, you can choose to drop them instead and say, give whatever drop reason you want to deny them. And then the final option is if you don't want to send them an email, but you also don't want to get rid of their information for things like emails, you can go down to convert to non-member. So instead of approving or declining their membership, you can keep them on your records as a non-member record. And that would just move them to a different database where you would have their information to contact them as a non-member, but they would not be made an active member. So that's what that requires approval does. If you say yes here, then someone has to go in and say yes or no to each person that applies. If you say no, then anyone from the public who has access to your website can just join and become a member and, quickly have access to the member functions of your website. So now we come to the next big change. So the two big changes that we have are the change to the renewal settings, those automatic options for automatic payments. The other change is the way business members function. So in our business memberships, you have yes and no. This is another pretty simple toggle. If you say no, then that means that we are prioritizing personal information. It is a personal sign up and you are joining as an individual or as a family membership or as an enthusiast. If you choose business membership yes, then the system will actually prioritize their business information. And when you're searching for them in the directory or searching for them in the people manager, it's going to show you their business information first. It also has the added benefit of choosing this added option that is fairly recent. Can members within the business add themselves to this membership? So this is another toggle, yes or no. If we say no, then this would be functioning as business memberships have functioned before. Whenever the business needs to add an extra employee underneath their membership, all they would do is just either have the primary person that runs that business membership account go into their profile and add a member. And I'll show you that in just a minute. Or you could have an administrator go in and link a profile to that existing membership. So that would just be a matter of going to the people manager and changing membership levels. We've added something that streamlines this just a little bit more. So if we go in and we say, can members within the business add themselves, and we say yes, what it will do is it will provide the primary person for this business membership with a code that when someone joins that organization, they can just copy and paste in that code or type in the code, and it will automatically link their membership to the primary person who's running that business membership. The person running that business membership would then be charged for whatever fees are associated with it. But obviously only people with access to that very specific code would be able to do so. So whenever that business gains a new employee and they need to be added as a member on the ClubExpress website, they can just give that employee the code. They go to the website and join and paste in the code during the joining process. So I'm going to take a break and I'm going to hop over to a different demo website really quickly and show you what that code's going to look like. So if we go over to one of our test websites, also called Northwest Balloon Club, it's actually a slightly different website. We're going to go over to our member profile for Colleen, and Colleen Carter is a business member. So she runs a business and she might have employees beneath her. And so when you are adding additional members to your account, you as an administrator can go into your profile and go to a section that says more member options. And below that, there will be chapters, additional members. And when you go to this page, this website loads a little bit slower than the other one. When you go to this page, you'll see here we can choose Colleen Carter is a primary member, and we can choose to manually add secondary members or tertiary members. We'll be talking about the difference between those in just a second. But when we are adding those members, we also get over on the right-hand side this little code. So when we go and copy and paste this code, we can provide this to anyone who is going to be joining Colleen's business. And when they are going through that joining process, all they have to do is either type in or paste in this code, and it will automatically connect them to Colleen. So it just saves either an administrator or Colleen an extra step of having to do this for them. They can do it entirely independently just by using this code. So now let's jump down. I'm going to skip these for just a second. I will circle back to these when we're talking about them in a second. So I've talked a lot about secondary and tertiary members. Let's talk about what that looks like to enable. So if we jump down to where it says spouse partners or tertiary members here, for different organizations, what you see as these little headers might be different. So on our Northwest Balloon Club, we have made this kind of a family organization because it's a balloon enthusiast club. It's not necessarily a professional organization. So we've assumed that most secondaries will be spouses or partners. And so that's what we have titled this section up here. There is another location in the control panel, and I'll show it in a minute, where you can change the titles for your what we would call secondary members. So the first one that's going to show up is going to be secondary members. Secondary members are full members of the organization, They can log in, they have their own username and password. The only limitation to them is that they have to be the same membership type as their primary. So if someone is a bar association member and they have a secondary, that secondary will also be a bar association member. The other limitation to a secondary member is that they have their membership fees paid by their primary. So the spouse partner, the secondary member, the business partner, whatever they are being called, their fees for membership will always be paid for by the primary member. They don't have to pay it themselves. Now, if they sign up for an event or if they purchase an item in the storefront, those fees can be paid by them. They have access to those things. It's just their membership that is required to be paid for by their primary. When you are selecting whether or not your organization allows them, there is a toggle, yes or no. If you say no, then this means this is an individual membership. They cannot have any sub members or anything like that tied in their member profile. If you allow for secondary or tertiary members, then you get this option where you can say how many are they allowed to have. Now, if it's an organization where you have to have, say, like, if you're a business organization, in order to be a business member, maybe you have to have at least one employee. And so you can set a minimum, meaning they're not able to join as a business unless they enter at least one employee. Most times there's not a minimum for most of our organizations. They leave the minimum set as 0. So you can join just as an individual business without employees or spouses or partners or secondaries. But there is always going to be a maximum. So by default with ClubExpress, especially if you're new to ClubExpress, this maximum is going to be set at 5. And when you are moving this up and down, you'll notice you get stuck at 5. You're not able to go above 5. If you need to have this set to 10 or 20 or some other number, you need to reach out to ClubExpress and let us know that you need this increase raised. We usually don't have a problem with that. The reason we limit it to 5 by default is because there is an added benefit to using secondary members, and that is that your ClubExpress fees are actually lower for secondary members than they are for primaries. So it is beneficial to have people doing multi-user memberships like this. But if you want to increase that number, you just have to reach out to us, and we'll make sure that it's a reasonable number. You can't have an organization with 5,000 sub members. With tertiaries, they are a slightly different type of sub member. Tertiary members are non-login members. So they will not get a username and they will not get a password, and they actually don't have access to do anything on the website themselves. All they would have access to do is just have their information recorded as a part of the person whose membership they belong to. So tertiary members are often, for our family memberships, are going to be things like children. So if you in this organization, for a family membership, you would have your spouse and partner, and then any children you have. The children don't necessarily need to log into the website. They're just being recorded as members tied above. Oftentimes, if there's fees associated with tertiary members, they're much, much lower or even free. And just as above, the limit for tertiary members is also going to be 5. And if you need to have more, then you can contact support and we can raise that. And when it comes to assigning fees for each of these, we are going to drop down to our fees section. And you'll notice as I turn these on and off, we lose access to a couple options here. So as I turn them on, you'll see extra rows open up down below in our fees section. So if I go to my club level fees, my primary member, this is going to be the price it costs for the primary member to join the organization. So it's going to say, we'll say it's $50 for a business membership. You'll also, just for the primary member, get an expiration date option. So this is going to say after the date of expiration, it's going to be more expensive. Now, this is not an added on fee. This is an alternate price. So if we were saying, it's a $10 late fee, we wouldn't put $10 here. We would actually put $60. So we would say, normal renewal and normal joining is going to be $50. And then once you expire, if you're going to renew your membership, if you've expired, then it's going to be $60 to cover that time that you were expired. This is where we can also set the price for each of our secondary members. So we can say for our secondary members, if you're a spouse partner, maybe there's a little bit of a discount and it's $45. And for children, we'll say it's only $10 if it's, not a business membership or something like that. If we're talking about a family membership, it's a much lower fee for our tertiary members. You'll notice there's not an option to have a late fee for our spouse partners. The reason for that is that the spouse partners and the tertiary members, so our secondary and our tertiary members, do not have access to renew themselves. Because the primary member is the one that pays the fees for all of their secondaries and all of their tertiaries, that also means that the primary member is the one that has to renew the membership for all of their secondaries and all of their tertiaries. So it is, it's not under their control to renew in time. So it's entirely up to the primary member. So whatever added fee, it's just a one-time added fee for renewing late for the primary member. There's not an option to say, for each person in your membership, you get an added cost for being late. It's just a one-time late fee that you get to add on. So now that we've talked about pricing, let's circle back up above to just below our business membership, and let's talk about a few other settings we have here. So we have our printed newsletter. This is something that you may or may not see for your organization if you have in your website setup chosen to have a printed newsletter managed by ClubExpress. Then a lot of our organizations don't do printed newsletters anymore, so you're probably not going to see this setting. But if you do, you can toggle this yes and no. And if you send them a printed newsletter, then it will produce a report for all of your members that receive a printed newsletter. Again, for a lot of our organizations, this is just either invisible or they just leave it set to no, because most of our organizations do electronic newsletters these days. And then we get to a really important section. So this is going to be our chapter selection. So something a lot of our organizations do is offer subgroup options. So if you are an organization with chapters or an organization with regions, then you may have subgroup or chapter selections. And your members, when they sign up for your organization or when they renew, then they have an option to select what chapter they belong to. So right now, this membership type is set to none, meaning when a member joins as a part of the Bar Association membership, they do not have the option to be assigned to a chapter. The other options we have are may select only one, must select only one, may select one or more, or must select at least one, but may select more. What that means is that joining a chapter might be optional. So you can say may select only one. You don't have to join a chapter, but you can only select a maximum of one chapter. So that would be for our organizations where if it's regional, obviously you can't be in two regions at once. And so you're stuck to selecting one chapter. Then there's the option for must select only one. And so again, if we're a regional organization, if you're in at least one region, you have to be in a region in order to join this club. So you have to select at least one chapter, and you cannot select any more. The other option is if you have chapters with subgroups that are more akin to, say, interests. So maybe your chapters are things like interests in knitting or interests in motorcycles or something like that. If you have different organizations, not based on region, but more based on what type of membership you're joining through, there is this option that says may select one or more, or must select at least one. This will let people join multiple chapters when they're signing up, but it will either be optional, so they can choose to join no chapters, or they can be required to select at least one chapter, but have the option to select additional chapters. When we are joining chapters, we can actually control how much those fees are as well. So when I select any of my chapter selection options, you'll see down here below my fees page, if I scroll down again, my options have changed here. So now I have this option. So on this demo site, we have 3 levels of organization. We have region, we have district, and we have chapter. So a lot of our organizations might have one level of chapters, or they might have multiple chapters levels within those. And so let's just focus in on region for now. Let's say we're just a region-based organization. We don't have additional levels of chapters. We can control what type of fees they might pay. So if you're joining a chapter, maybe that chapter also collects membership fees. So we can go down here to our fee controls, and we can either say club level. So if it's club level, that means no matter what chapter you're joining, if you join a chapter, it's $10. The other option is region level, meaning that it is up to the region to set their own fee. Now, we'll still have this here as a default. So whenever the region is setting their own fee, this is the recommended price, but the ultimate price is determined by the region, not determined by the club. We get those same options for also our district and our chapter. So if you're an organization with a multi-level organization, we have a few other training videos that go over the way that structure functions. I'm not going to go too deep into structuring your organization today because we're focusing more on member types, but you can set fees. So maybe at the region level, if you're in the Midwest, then you are, paying a certain fee. And then if you belong to, maybe the Chicago chapter or the Chicago area, the Illinois area, maybe you also pay a secondary fee for that. And then if you belong to Chicago, you would pay a fee for that. So you can have different fees and these all add to the primary members cost. And then if your secondary and tertiary members belong to chapters as well, they may or may not also incur those fees. So if we're going to allow our individual chapters to control the fees for each of these, there's a separate page we have to go to set those fees up. So again, this is only going to apply to our organizations that are multi-level organizations. So they're going to have chapters and regions. So if you're just an organization without those, then this part you can kind of, gloss over. But let's go back to our control panel and we'll look at what that organization looks like. So this is going to be in our control panel. And instead of going to the people tab, we're going to hop over to the club tab. Now, this may say association or organization for you, but it's going to be the tab in between money and communications. So some of you may have something other than club here. But once you're here, you're going to go down to your organization data under the setup section. So we're going to click on organization data. And on this screen, we're going to have our organization. Now, this is a 3-tier organization. So at the top level, we have our Northwest Balloon Club. That's our actual, entire club. And then we have our regions. So we can say, region 10 is here. And then below region 10, we have California. And then we have our individual chapters. Now, at each level, we can come in here and right click on one of these. And we can choose edit membership fees. So for each region, for each chapter, we can edit the fees associated with joining that organization. Now, each membership type, again, this is an organization. We're using a demo website, so there's going to be a lot of overwhelming data here. But for the most part, if we're just going to focus in on one of these, if we take this membership type and we take a look at it, we'll see there's that default option. So for our bar association, I haven't saved those changes, but this would say $10 if I was to save it. And then it's going to ask each of my membership fees. So for the individual member, it's going to say $50. For my sub member, my secondary member titled spouse partner here, I can say it's $25. And then for my tertiary members, for this one, it is currently set to free. So this is going to add this price to the membership for each person in that level. So obviously there's only ever one primary for each membership. So if my primary membership is $50, now just being a primary member in this chapter is going to start adding up to $100, $50 to join the club and $50 to join this chapter. And then if I have a spouse partner, so if we go back to our membership type page real quick, for the club, my spouse partner is paying the default $45. So that's just for being a member, it's $45. And then for joining this chapter, it's an additional $25. So that's going to add up to $70 for that person. So if I'm joining as a single member joining this chapter and bringing a spouse partner, we're currently sitting at a total of 170, 100 for the primary member, 70 for the spouse. And then we're not charging, this chapter is not charging for tertiary members. And so it would only be just that $10. So, doing that quick math, if it's one primary, one spouse, and one tertiary, it would be $180 total. It's a lot of weird math, but the nice thing is the system's going to do it for you. You just say for each chapter, it costs how much for a member to be in that chapter, and it's going to add to the price of membership whenever they join, and additionally whenever they renew. A lot of information I know, but once we're done with this page and we've configured it, we can just hit save and it would show up. I'm not going to save the changes to this membership type just yet, but it will show up on the list of available membership types. Once we've done that and a member is going to go join our organization, there's a few things that they'll see. So when I come, I'm going to actually log out really quick and go through the member joining process to show you where these options show up. So if I log out, go to log in as a different user, to my homepage, there's a button that says join now. So we've added this to our member. Right now we're looking at the public member menu and I go to join now. It's going to ask me first right up at the top, sign up type. Because I have business members that have that code, it can say, I want to join as a new member. That's the first option it's going to present to us. But because there are business membership types with that code, I can come in here and say, I want to add myself to an existing business membership. And it takes away the rest of my options. And all I have to do is paste that code that my boss gave to me or whatever the business membership type code is here. And it will go ahead and it'll select my membership type. It'll take care of all of my fees and it will just assign me to that business because I'm using that business's code. If I am not joining an already existing business membership type, I can choose to leave it as I'm a new member. And this is where we'll see the membership type selection. And when I click on this dropdown, these are all of the business membership types that are available to me. We can see there's that bar association that we were working with earlier. And when I join this type, it's going to say your membership may include one or more spouse. Your membership may include requires approval. So it's going to go ahead and let me know the information about joining this. And because it requires approval, that means I know once I'm done with this, it will put me kind of in a holding pattern until an administrator approves my membership. And then you'll also see a, how did you hear about this? This is a separate thing that we've gone over in other videos, but this is just a, how did you hear about the organization? You don't have to have, you don't have to fill that in order to become a member. But once you select your membership type, it's going to also have a running total for as you step through this membership type. So if I switch to a different membership type, maybe an instructor level, we'll see there's our description, just says instructor. This type requires approval. I can switch around to different membership types and we'll see this membership type here has a fee already for $159. So you can see a running total as you sign up through that membership. Once you get to future pages in the membership sign up process, if you add other members that also have fees as a part of your sign up, then the current total will go up and it will just keep a running total. So you don't have to do all that complex math for every person that signs up. The system is going to do it all for you. This is kind of the overview of membership types and setting up the membership types for your organization. But before we wrap up, I did want to head back over to Sam. Did we have any important information that we want to go through before we wrap up?
Just a couple of things. There were some questions about allocating funds for organizations with subgroups using the built-in merchant account. So we can certainly circle back and touch on that a little bit next week again when we talk about configuring people options. But in order to use the reporting capabilities for financial accounts, you don't necessarily have to be using the merchant account, but certainly to disperse funds that you're collecting on your site to specific accounts, especially for chaptered organizations, you would need to be using the built-in ClubExpress merchant account. There were some questions about setting up notifications for membership directors. We'll be covering that next week. We'll be going through configuring people options, which is sort of one of the final steps in getting your membership types and your member information set up. Be sure to tune in for that in the coming weeks.
I did see a question just pop in that says there's an option for an initial setup fee. Yes, there's a few ways to tackle that. One thing you'll find with ClubExpress is that if there's a way to do something, then there's probably 2 or 3 ways to do it. So what you might be referring to is what we call additional charges. So in our control panel, if we go over to the people tab, there's a section under setup called additional charges. And we've already got a bunch of additional charges here, but we can go in and you can add a charge. And just to step through this really quickly, you just give it a name. You would say sign up fee. You would make it active and you could say there's a $10 sign up fee. And then you'll see this availability option. And for new members, it says optional. And for renewals, it says optional. If you wanted to add an initial setup fee, you would just say required. And for renewals, you could say not available. And that would mean that it's going to, anytime someone signs up, and we would want to say, financial account, master membership dues, because it's going to be a part of their membership dues. And now anytime someone is joining, it's going to tack on a $10 charge when they first sign up. And that will apply to everyone. The other way to do it was something that I went over a little bit earlier, which is you can create a membership type called, new member, and have that be a slightly higher fee and have the availability be new member only. And then when members renew, they can then renew into other membership types. So I've seen some organizations when they're setting up their membership types, they'll have like an onboarding membership type. So they'll call it first year or new member. And that will be the only option available for new members. So, everyone who's joining as a new member comes in as, this type of member. And then from there, once they renew, they can start renewing as different membership types. And the rest of those membership types would be set up as renewals only. That way they're not available to new members, and you could charge a higher price for new members.
And I think, and that's it. Devin will allow you to take it away.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. We will be editing this webinar, and it should be up on our YouTube channel within a few days. So keep an eye out for that if you want to go ahead and, again, subscribe so that you can get that notification once it gets posted. And we will see you, I believe, next week. All right, guys. See you next time.